morning, y'all. It is Monday, April the 20th, and I want to get right into this one because the forecast situation developing for the back half of this week is one of the most meteorologically interesting and potentially most dangerous setups I have seen in a while. And I do not use that language lightly after the week we just came through, because y'all know what we just came through. More than a week of relentless, punishing, exhausting severe weather across the central United States. Tornadoes from Kansas to Wisconsin. 3 particularly dangerous situations. Warnings in a single day. Baseball-sized hail. Flash flooding shutting down interstate highways. Over 100 tornado warnings issued in a single outbreak. Schools with their roofs torn off. Farms leveled. Families displaced. And I have been right here with y'all through every single round of it, every day, every night, every warning. That is what this channel does, and that is what I will always do. But here is what I need y'all to understand this morning, and I need you to hear this clearly before I go a single step further. The brief pause in active, severe weather that we are experiencing right now, this quiet stretch to start the new week, is not the end of this season's story. It is not even close to the end. Because right now, as I sit here going through the model data and the Weather Prediction Center's extended forecast discussions, what I am watching develop in the atmosphere over the next 4 to 5 days is something that the models are calling a collision. Literally. 2 separate storm systems, 2 distinct pieces of upper-level energy originating from different source regions are on a track to either come together or interact so closely that the severe weather consequences of what they produce together could be significantly greater than what either one of them would have produced on its own. 2 big storms about to collide over the central United States, on top of a landscape that is already saturated and battered from the past 10 days. And the window for that collision is Thursday into Friday of this week. That is the headline. That is what I am tracking. And that is why we are having this conversation right now at the start of the week, rather than Wednesday night when the warnings are already being issued. Let me walk y'all through the atmospheric setup here, because this is genuinely one of the more scientifically fascinating and operationally challenging forecasts. I have had to communicate in a while, and I think understanding the mechanics of what is happening is going to help you take it seriously rather than just filing it away as another severe weather video. Here is the big picture. On one track, you have a Pacific storm system that is already making landfall on the west coast right now, pushing rain and heavy mountain snow into California, Oregon, and Washington as we speak. That system is going to work its way eastward through the week, crossing the Great Basin and the Intermountain West, climbing the Northern Rockies, and then, and this is the critical part, ejecting eastward out of the Northern Rockies and driving into the Northern Plains by Thursday. The Weather Prediction Center is already tracking this one explicitly. They are calling for very strong winds and widespread precipitation across the Northern Rockies and High Plains as this system moves through, with temperatures dropping sharply on the backside of the associated cold front as it pushes southeastward across the central United States later in the week. Now that is storm number 1, a well-organized Pacific system with a track and a timeline that the models have been consistent on for several days. On its own, that system produces a significant weather event across portions of the Northern Plains and Upper Midwest. But here is where this forecast gets genuinely complex and genuinely dangerous. And here is where the 2 storms colliding comes in. Because at the same time that Pacific system is ejecting out of the Rockies and driving into the Northern Plains, a second separate piece of upper-level energy is going to be working its way down from the Pacific Northwest and interacting with the flow pattern over the western United States. The question that the models have been wrestling with, and I mean genuinely wrestling with significant disagreement between runs, is whether these 2 pieces of energy stay separate, producing 2 distinct but somewhat weaker severe weather rounds, or whether they phase, whether they merge, whether they combine their atmospheric energy into a single, consolidated, much more powerful trough that slams into the central United States with the combined force of both systems rather than the divided force of each one individually. And y'all, I need to explain why that distinction, 2 separate systems versus 1 merged system, matters so profoundly for what the severe weather outcome looks like at the surface. When 2 upper-level energy features phase and consolidate into a single deep trough, a few things happen simultaneously that each make the severe weather threat worse. First, the trough itself becomes deeper and more negatively tilted, which means it generates stronger upper-level divergence, stronger upward forcing throughout the depth of the atmosphere. Second, the jet stream associated with the merged trough is significantly stronger than what either individual piece of energy would have produced on its own. We are talking about potential jet stream winds at the 30,000-foot level exceeding 160 to 180 miles per hour in the phasing scenario, compared to perhaps 120 to 130 in the split scenario. That difference in jet stream strength translates directly into deeper wind shear through the depth of the storm atmosphere and dramatically more favorable conditions for supercell thunderstorm organization and tornado production. Third, a deeper, more consolidated trough pulls the surface low-pressure system down more aggressively, which drives a stronger low-level jet northward from the Gulf of Mexico overnight. And as I have said every single time this comes up, a stronger low-level jet overnight is the ingredient that makes nighttime tornadoes more likely and more violent. The SPC's day 4 through 8 outlook issued Friday morning was unusually direct about what is at stake here. Their forecasters noted that the European model suite, the ECMWF, the GEFS, the EPS ensemble system, is showing a developing large-scale trough across the western United States with multiple shortwave troughs that could result in several rounds of severe weather from Wednesday through Friday. But then they noted that the GFS and the ECAIFS are showing a consolidated mid-level trough, the phasing scenario, that could result in a much more substantial severe weather event across the central and southern plains. When the SPC writes the words much more substantial in a day 4 through 8 outlook, I sit up straighter in my chair. Because those words from those forecasters at that lead time are not words they use casually. They are telling the meteorological community and the public that the high-end scenario for this event is significantly more dangerous than the baseline scenario, and that which model solution verifies is going to make an enormous difference in the severity of what communities across the central United States experience Thursday and Friday. Now I want to be completely honest with you about what that model uncertainty means for how you should be planning and preparing. It means that the specific track of the worst weather, the specific corridor of highest tornado and hail risk, and the exact timing of the most significant severe weather are not yet locked in. Some of those details will not come into sharp focus until Tuesday or Wednesday when we are inside the reliable high-resolution model window. But here's the thing, and this is a point I make every single time there is forecast uncertainty at extended range. Model uncertainty about the details does not mean preparation should be uncertain. The broad strokes are clear. A significant severe weather threat is developing for Thursday through Friday across the central and southern plains and into the mid-Mississippi Valley. Whether that threat is very significant or extraordinarily significant is what is uncertain. The category of significant is not in question, and that category alone demands full preparation from everyone in the potential corridor right now, today, at the start of the week. Let me talk about the moisture environment that is going to be in place when these two systems arrive, because the thermodynamic fuel for this event is going to be extraordinary, and it is something the WPC has already flagged explicitly. Right now, as that cold front from last week pushes offshore and a brief period of high pressure builds in, the southern and central plains are going to experience a dramatic warm-up through Tuesday and Wednesday. The WPC is explicitly calling for temperatures running 20 to 30 degrees above average across the central United States on Wednesday. In late April, that means we are talking about temperatures climbing into the upper 80s to potentially the low 90s from Texas through Oklahoma and into Kansas, under skies that are going to be heating the surface aggressively and building surface-based instability at a rate that is going to be remarkable, given how early in the season we still are. Mid to upper 60-degree surface dew points are already showing up in the extended guidance across the Gulf-adjacent states, and that moisture is going to surge northward with a strengthening southerly flow ahead of the incoming trough. What that sets up by Thursday is a warm sector across the southern and central plains that is going to be carrying CAPE values, the thermodynamic fuel for thunderstorms, in the range of 3,000 to 4,000 joules per kilogram in the most unstable areas. Let me put that in the context of this week that we just survived. Friday's outbreak, the one that produced 3 PDS tornado warnings, more than 20 confirmed tornadoes, and more than 100 tornado warnings, had CAPE values of roughly 2,500 to 3,500 joules per kilogram across the threat corridor. The potential exists for Thursday's event to be fueled by even more instability than Friday's was. I want you to let that land for a second. Even more instability, combined with 2 storm systems potentially merging their energy overhead simultaneously. I also need to spend some time on the hail threat from this setup because it is going to be substantial and it is going to surprise a lot of people who are not paying attention to it when you have 3,000 to 4,000 joules of CAPE combined with very steep mid-level lapse rates, which the guidance is showing will be in place across the southern plains by Thursday behind the intrusion of cold air at the mid-levels ahead of the trough. The updraft velocities inside supercells become extreme. I am talking about estimated updraft speeds in the 80 to 110 mile per hour range, inside the cores of the strongest storms. Hail grows by riding those updrafts up through the freezing layer, accumulating ice layers with each pass, and the stronger and taller the updraft, the larger the hail can grow before it finally falls out, in the strongest supercells. Thursday, given the CAPE and lapse rate profile the models are showing, Baseball-sized hail is a realistic possibility across a broad area. And in isolated, particularly intense supercells, we cannot rule out hailstones approaching softball size. Y'all, softball-sized hail is not a weather inconvenience. Softball-sized hail is a life safety emergency. It falls at terminal velocities approaching 80 miles per hour. It shatters windshields, it penetrates roofing materials, it destroys crops that took months to grow. It kills animals caught in the open. If you are in the potential threat corridor on Thursday and a severe thunderstorm warning is issued for your location, please, I'm asking you as directly as I can, get inside a sturdy structure immediately and stay away from windows. Do not stand on your porch to watch it. Do not run out to move your car when the hail is already falling. Get inside and stay inside until the warning has expired and the storm has passed. Now let me address the flooding component of this setup, because the collision of two storm systems over a landscape that has already been saturated by more than a week of heavy rainfall is going to produce a flash flooding threat that I think is going to be the most underestimated and potentially most deadly element of this entire event. Here is the arithmetic of what happens when multiple rounds of heavy rainfall hit fully saturated soil. The soil cannot absorb any more water. None. Every drop of rain that falls becomes surface runoff immediately, flowing directly into creek channels and river systems that are already running elevated or above flood stage after last week. The National Weather Service's Advanced Hydrologic Prediction Service is showing multiple rivers across Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, and Oklahoma currently running at elevated levels, some in minor flood stage, some approaching moderate. When the next 1 to 3 inches of rainfall arrives Thursday in a period of 3 to 6 hours on top of that, we're not talking about rivers rising gradually. We are talking about rivers reaching major flood stage in hours rather than days. We are talking about flash floods that develop and intensify faster than warning systems can always track them. And we are talking about communities that have already been through devastating flooding in the past 10 days being asked to absorb yet another round on the same already beaten landscape. The Ozark Plateau, the Arkansas River Valley, the watersheds of central and eastern Kansas, the floodplains of the lower Missouri River. These are the areas I am most concerned about for the flooding component of this event, and I need every person who lives near a river, a creek, or any low-lying area in those regions to be monitoring their local stream gauges actively through the rest of this week. The USGS WaterWatch website is free, publicly accessible, and shows real-time stream gauge readings across the entire country. Know what your local waterway is running at right now. Know what flood stage looks like for your specific gauge. And make the commitment right now, before Thursday, that you are not going to drive through any water across a road, regardless of how it looks, how shallow you think it is, or how many times you have crossed that road before. The two deadliest words in severe weather season are not tornado watch. They are not flash flood warning. They are two words that thousands of people say to themselves every year before driving into floodwater, words that cost lives every single season. Those two words are, I'll make it. Please do not say those words. Please just turn around. Here's what I need every person watching this video to do between now and Thursday. First, share this video right now, today, Monday, because the people who need this information the most are the people who exhaled this weekend thinking the worst of the spring was behind them. The people in Oklahoma and Kansas and Missouri and Arkansas who watched last week's outbreak move east and felt that involuntary sense of relief. They need to know that two systems are heading their way, and that the collision of those systems could produce something at least as serious as what we just lived through, if not more serious. Text it to your family. Post it in your neighborhood group. Share it everywhere. Second, if you have property damage from last week that has left your home or your shelter compromised in any way, address that today and tomorrow while the weather is quiet. A partially damaged roof, a compromised cellar door, a shelter space that got flooded and needs to be pumped out. These things need to be fixed before Thursday, not after. Third, make sure y'all call is active on your phone. The overnight tornado threat from the low-level jet strengthening behind the Thursday system is real when it is documented in the current model data. A direct phone call to your number when a tornado warning covers your exact location is the tool that bridges the gap between a warning being issued and you waking up and getting to safety. $14.95 for a full year of coverage. Link is in the description. Please do it today. Fourth, stay engaged with me through this week. I'm going to be updating this forecast every single day as the models come into sharper agreement on the specific threat details. By Tuesday or Wednesday, I should be able to give you much more specific information about the primary tornado corridor, the peak timing, and the exact nature of the threat. Whether we are looking at the split scenario with two distinct rounds or the consolidated scenario with one major outbreak. Every update matters, and every update is going to be on this channel the moment the data supports it. Subscribe if you're not already. Hit that bell. Because the gap between being informed on Monday and not knowing until Thursday night is the gap between being prepared and being caught off guard. And this community, the Y'all Squad, exists to close that gap for every person in the path of what is coming. 2 big storms on a collision course over a landscape that is already carrying the scars of a brutal 2 weeks of severe weather. That is the forecast. That is what the data is showing. And I am going to be right here with every single one of you from now until the last warning clears and the last community is on the other side of this safely. Stay engaged, y'all. Stay prepared. And share this video right now. Someone in the path of these storms needs to see it today. I love y'all. Stay safe out there.